Sanjabiha Jai Kama Kunjabiha Jai Gopijana Giri Varada Gopijana Varada Giri Varada Yashodanandana Gaja Janananda Yashodananda Gaja Janananda Yam Tira Vanachari Yamana Tira Dayaka Ma Kunjabihari Jayaka Madhava Kunjabihari Gopidana Varada Gopidana Varada Yashodanandana Jaja Jananda Yashodanandana Jaja Jananda Yamira Varnasari Yamakira Varnasari Sayada Mada Kunjabira Jaya Ma Kunjabira Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Rama Rama Jaya Prabhupada Shiva Prabhupada Prabhupada Ki Jai. I'm trying to make myself as I can't see myself, and usually I would be fine with that, but I wanted to draw something on the flip chart, so you'll have to see. I mean, I guess I'll have to be the main speaker for that, but I don't know how to do that. Okay, anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 5, Text 27 to 28. Avaksha katichin masan katichid vayubhojanaha aradhayan mantram imam abhyasyanta idashpatim Om Namo Narayanaya Purushaya Mahatmane Vishuddha Sattva Mahahamsaya Dhimahi I'll just repeat 28. Om Namo Narayanaya Purushaya Mahatmane Vishuddha Sattva Mahahamsaya Dhimahi Om Namo Narayanaya Purushaya Mahatmane Vishuddha Sattva Mahahamsaya Dhimahi. Would anybody like to repeat online?
We're repeating both verses or just 28?
Whichever you would like. We can do both.
Bhaksha katichin masan katichid vayubhojanaha aradhayan mantram imam abhyasyanta idaspatim Om Namo Narayanaya Purushaya Mahatmane Vishuddha Sattva Maha Hamsaya Dhimahi.
Thank you, Baba. Anyone else?
Abhakshaha katichin mashan katichid vayubhojanaha aradhayan mantram imam abhyasyanta idashpatim Om Namo Narayanaya Purushaya Mahatmane Vishuddha Sattva Mahahamsaya Dhimahi.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Om Namo Narayana Purushaya Mahatmane Vishuddha Sattva Mahahamsaya.
Right, thank you. Vaksha, drinking only water. Katichit Mahasan for some months. Katichit for some. Vayu Bhojana, merely breathing or eating air. Aradhayan, worshipped. Mantram Imam, this mantra, which is non-different from Narayana. Abhyasyanta, practicing. Idapatim, the master of all mantras. Lord Vishnu. Om, O Lord. Nama, respectful obeisances. Narayana, unto Lord Narayana. Purushaya, the Supreme Person. Maha-Atmane, the exalted Supersoul. Vishuddha Sattva who is always situated in the transcendental abode. Mahahamsaya, the great swan-like personality of Godhead. Dhimahi, we always offer. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. For a few months, the sons of Prajapati Daksha drank only water and ate only air. Thus, undergoing great austerities, they recited this mantra. Let us offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always situated in his transcendental abode. Since he is the Supreme Person, Paramahamsa, let us offer our respectful obeisances unto him. Purport. From these verses, it is apparent that the chanting of the Maha Mantra or the Vedic mantras must be accompanied by severe austerities. In Kali Yuga, people cannot undergo severe austerities like those mentioned herein, drinking only water and eating only air for many months. One cannot imitate such a process. But at least one must undergo some austerity by giving up 4 unwanted principles, namely illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling. Anyone can easily practice this tapasya, and then the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra will be effective without delay. One should not give up the process of austerity. If possible, one should bathe in the waters of the Ganges or Yamuna. Or in the absence of the Ganges and Yamuna, one may bathe in the water of the sea. This is an item of austerity. Our Krishna consciousness movement has therefore established two very large centers, one in Vrindavan and another in Mayapur, Navadvip. There one may bathe in the Ganges or Yamuna, chant the Hare Krishna mantra, and thus become perfect and return home back to Godhead. Om Jnana Timanandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshara Anmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, everybody. So I was just reading through this whole chapter. I mentioned this before, but was it last? I'm trying to remember if it was last year, December. I think it was that Devamrita Maharaj at the end of year festival retreat that they have in New Zealand was giving classes on these verses. Either that or it was like a spring festival. Or sorry, was giving a class on this chapter. And he specifically was speaking on the verses where Prajapati Daksha curses Narada Muni, and really going into like everything every insult that Prajapati Daksha is throwing at Narada Muni and breaking it down, which was, yeah, both enlightening and kind of, he just brings to life all the pastimes. So I remember also being like kind of funny in a sense, like just the insult because they're so ludicrous, the insults that Daksha's throwing at Narada Muni, and that it's actually like Daksha's saying this to Narada Muni, but actually it's a reflection of himself, Daksha. So anyway, then I was like, yeah, I should just go back and read this chapter because whenever I've read it before in Bhagavatam, I kind of just glossed over it, even though the purports are so juicy. So yeah, I really took from reading back through the chapter, how much we're actually influenced by our environment and our association. So we can see that with both sets of sons of Prajapati Daksha. They go off to do austerities, and then, well, either they were inclined just due to their karma or due to the austerities that they perform, they become very inclined toward renunciation. And Narada Muni takes advantage of that. He's such an expert preacher. He notices, oh, they have this propensity already. And then he uses that and other tactics. Actually, Narada Muni uses so many preaching tactics in this chapter. So just to name three. First of all, he sees, again, the inclination for renunciation in both sets of sons. I think Prabhupada, I don't know if he speaks about it in the purports regarding both sets of sons, but at least the second set, he mentions that in a purport that Narada Muni noted this and then encouraged them in that way, take up the renounced order of life, which is what the expert spiritual master can do and can discern, how much does he push someone in a certain direction lovingly? And then the second tactic is I think that I've lost how to pronounce it, but the where's the word? How do you say the second set's the son's name? Oh, okay. Hariashvas are the first set, and then second set. Can anybody pronounce it for me? Or I can just find it somewhere. Okay, anyway, I'll just call on the second set. So then the second set of sons, okay, so he says to them, well, your older brothers have already, taken up the renounced order. So he uses the attachment to family to then encourage them. Oh, there it is, Savalashvas, to also take up the renounced order of life. So again, such an expert preacher that he's using someone's material attachment to be able to bring them closer to Krishna. And then the third thing is that following this, when Prajapati Daksha gets so upset, I mean, really just livid, then and also quite despondent, like he's lamenting so much, then Narada Muni enters in and he's like, great time to preach to Prajapati Daksha, which I found very humorous and like ironic that, you know, Narada Muni's like caused this whole scenario, and then he's like, great, now that he's lamenting based on something that Narada Muni has essentially done, then he can go in and preach to him. So I just always like that point. But anyway, so going back to the point, yes, we're constantly influenced by our environment, our associations. So both sets of sons are very lucky to have the association of Narada Muni, as well as, you know, Prajapati Daksha did, to his credit, he did send them to this place that was especially auspicious for executing austerities and sacrifices. So I wanted to go back in the chapter and read a little bit from text 11 and also text 10, I think. Either that or it's 12. Anyway, so I was thinking about how in the Bhagavad Gita the field of activities is described, and sometimes that can be taken as, oh, the field of activities. You know, one could think of like the external field, the external environment, but it's actually, and it might also refer to that, but it's actually the body. So, sort of like the gross body and also the subtle body. So our internal reality, so to speak. Well, it's not really reality. It's based on a misconception, but I'll just say internal reality for now. So this field of activities, you know, we like to think, or it's just obvious that we're influenced by the external environment around us. You know, if we're like sitting in the temple right now, it's a very yeah, not only sattvic environment, but just spiritually surcharged environment. Like I just got back from Atlanta, and I was at a temple and I was just noticing like how easy it was to chant japa, or how focused my japa was, just because of the, like, by dint of, you know, the conviction and like the Krishna consciousness of the devotees um, around me. And just that the whole place was surcharged with like, okay, here's Prabhupada's program, here's Prabhupada's mission, that's what we keep in the center. Yes, there may be faults in the externals or differences in the externals, things like that, but that's what's at the core. And I could just feel it in my japa. I'm like, wow, it was so nice. So our environment definitely influences us. And then if you're, you know, trying to chant your job on the side of the highway or something like that, it's not going to be the same. Um, yeah, or even like, let's say whenever I would go back to see my family, like, okay, first day japa is good, and then second, and then by the third day, I'm just like, man, I am so apathetic to Krishna. Like, you could just feel it so much in the japa. So anyway, there's other ways that we know we're influenced by our environment, but the japa is a pretty good indicator. So, yeah, we often think of, okay, I'm influenced by my external environment. Yes, I'll admit to that if I'm like a little bit humble, but actually all the time we're being influenced by the field of activities, which is our internal environment. So I wanted to read, yeah, just this text 11 from the chapter. So this is when Narada Muni is instructing the Haryashvas. It says, the Haryashvas understood the meaning of Narada's words as follows. The word Bhu, the earth, refers to the field of activities. The material body, which is a result of the living being's actions, is his field of activities, and it gives him false designations. Since time immemorial, he has received various types of material bodies, which are the roots of bondage to the material world. If one foolishly engages in temporary fruitive activities and does not look toward the cessation of this bondage, what will be the benefit of his actions? So I really like this translation. I mean, just the translation alone, like, stimulates so much thought about how, yeah, the material body is, again, the field of activities, and it gives him false designations. And something I found very helpful is, like, we talk so much about false ego in the mind, intelligence, false ego, but I find it very helpful to, like, break it down to see how it actually manifests in, like, our day-to-day life. And it's like, well, in a sense, we know, okay, well, something comes up, I'm acting out of false ego, I'm not thinking of Krishna. But it really just gets, like, so subtle, because we just, by dint of us just having a material body and mind, we have, like, whenever you get a computer and there's the default settings on it, we just have default settings that are not conducive to Krishna consciousness. I mean, some things you can, yeah, use. Actually, everything you can use in Krishna service, but it's a matter of figuring out how to do that, and also taking guidance on how to do that. But yeah, it actually takes work to be conscious, and then takes work to be Krishna conscious. So, there's the famous thing everybody says, first become conscious and then become Krishna conscious. So I have found it personally helpful to become conscious of looking at the false ego in this way that I'll draw and explain. To become conscious, it's not the only way to get the false ego, and it's just kind of like a one angle of vision at it. So it's not, like, specifically written in the Bhagavatam the way I'm going to represent it. But yeah, it's helped me to be able to catch myself, like, oh, okay, this is not, I might think that, oh, I'm just acting because I'm a devotee, and what I do, that means I'm just acting out of Krishna consciousness, but this is not actually the case. And then it becomes very empowering, because you can see, oh, that's just my default mechanism, like the windows, like the screen, the background that they already give you, and, or, like, if you go into Word or Google Docs and it's already Times New Roman, 11-point font, like that. And if you don't know any other option, if you don't know how programming works, then you're just going to have to go with the default. Whereas if you, learn about programming and can catch, like, see what's happening, and then make a different decision, oh, I can change the font, I can change the size, this, that, and the other, then there's so much empowerment in that, and you can, yeah, make very conscious decisions. I hope this is making sense. Anyway, if it's not yet, then hopefully it will when I start to use the the board. So I'll just read a little bit more of this purport, and then I'll draw it up there. Narada Muni spoke to the Haryashvas, the sons of Prajapati Daksha, about 10 allegorical subjects: the king, the kingdom, the river, the house, the physical elements, and so forth. After considering these by themselves, the Haryashvas could understand that the living entity engaged in his body seeks happiness, but takes no interest in how to become free from his engagement. This is a very important verse, since all the living entities in the material world are very active, having obtained their particular types of bodies. A man works all day and night for sense gratification, and animals like hogs and dogs also work for sense gratification all day and night. Birds, beasts, and all other conditioned living entities engage in various activities without knowledge of the soul encaged within the body. Especially in the human form of body, one's duty is to act in such a way that he can release himself from his engagement. But without the instructions of Narada or his representative in the disciplic succession, people blindly engage in bodily activities to enjoy Maya Sukha, flickering temporary happiness. They do not know how to become free from their material engagement. Rishabdev therefore said that such activity is not at all good, since it encages the soul again and again in a body subjected to the threefold miseries of the material condition. Okay, so I will turn this. Oh, I forgot it's backwards on the. Sorry. Okay. Either I'm gonna have to write backwards or do something else. right? Yeah, it is backwards, right? Oh no, maybe it's not. Okay,
Not
anyways.
backwards.
Great. Okay, so in the center here we have the real self. Well, I'll just draw it first and then I'll explain it. Mm, Okay, so in the middle we have our real self, which is the spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. I don't know if you can hear me. And, by nature, we are eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. And then we have this second ring out, which is, so these are like the material layers. We have this in the middle and then material layers. This is just one way, again, of breaking them down. Then we have the critic. And then we have the next ring out is a persona. And then the final ring out is the ideal self. So essentially, what happens in material life is that our real self is covered by all these layers. And basically, in order to like develop, our false self that we have to have to exist with and operate within this material world, basically, originally we come down from the spiritual world because we're envious of Krishna. So in that sense, we're already critical. So we already have this, outer ring. In a sense, we're critical. Of course, Prabhupada does explain that it's like, or maybe it's, anyway, I'll just give Devamitha Maharaj's example because I can't remember exactly how he took that from what Prabhupada said. But that, it's like if you're having rice and dal every day, that's very nice. And then you're like, I wonder what pizza would be like. So just that thought, I wonder what enjoying like Krishna would be like. Boom, you're in the material world. But anyway, if we're envious, yes, we already have this critic. We're like critical of ourselves. Oh, I'm not enjoying like that. I'm not as good as that other person. Um, I want to be like that and I want them to be in a lower position. So we're we're actually admiring them, but we're criticizing ourselves for not being in that position. And then we have this next layer out, which is the persona that we adopt in this material world and in all of our relationships, who we think we are. Oh, I'm a great businessman, I'm a beautiful woman. And that becomes our identity and just our whole source of identity is like wrapped around these things. Even can be as devotees, oh, I'm a good book distributor, I'm a good cook, um, I'm the humble one, whatever, this, that, and the other. I'm the hard worker. And then this last ring is this ideal self. So in material life, this ideal self is formulated basically by, okay, there's your, how you grow up, the information your parents give you, your siblings, caretakers like that. And then there's also school. So, if you're not smart, if you don't get, all A's, something like that, you're worthless. And then also a very big part of that is pop culture and Hollywood. So actually we have all these things going on, all these layers covering our real self, because we have to somehow or other figure out how to operate in this material world in an artificial way. So basically this constantly, there's this we have to maintain this persona, and we're constantly like there's this subtle like uh defense mechanism, like a critic of like, oh, they're gonna, they'll see you like this, they'll see you like that. You can't show them, you can't be vulnerable, you can't show them your real self. Because then, you'll be rejected or this, that, and the other. That's just like the fear is the basis of the material world. We want like the only person that can, really love us perfectly like that is Krishna, and then by extension, the spiritual master. but we're looking for love in all these different ways. And we think that by maintaining a certain persona, we're going to get that. So anyway, there's a lot going on with this, and I'm just realizing I'm like, I could give like 3 classes on this, but essentially that's the breakdown. The point being that we have all kinds of layers based on, yeah, who we think we are. It's basically just we're operating out of fear that we don't want to give up like these personas. And that, again, that could even be within bhakti. I know I definitely have experienced that. Well, who am I if I'm not distributing books? Who am I if I'm not, able to do a certain amount of service every day? Or who am I if I try to do something nice, but I'm misunderstood? Yeah, like shatter you. I've heard also that a lot of like athletes or Olympians or things like that, whenever they get injured, they get so depressed because not just because they can't like they were looking forward to competing, but because that's what their whole identity is wrapped up in. But all this is different. This is material. So all this is different from the real self, which is, the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna, and is again by nature blissful, all cognizant, eternal. So yeah, it helps to actually know like these programs, the default programmings that are running. And then, we can see that side by side with what our actual spiritual nature is. And it's like, oh, which one am I acting on? And that's like a moment to moment, day by day consciousness, which sounds like a lot of work, and it is. But, you know, whoever said that it wasn't going to be hard work, it's actually quite enlivening and quite empowering whenever we can like just essentially that's like how people say being in the present moment instead of being in lamenting about the past. Oh, I did this, and everybody's probably thinking of me in this way, or I'm thinking of myself in this way. I'm beating myself up. Why did I do that? Or projecting to the future. Well, if I do this, I can gain you know respect, or like we concoct so many things about the future, but trying to have moment to moment, day by day awareness helps us to be able to make, okay, right now how can I make a Krishna conscious decision, because you can't control the past or the future, you can only control right now. So yeah, and really all these things, like I said, just speaking within the context of Krishna consciousness, wanting to be known in a certain way or appear a certain way, or even to ourselves, having this ideal self. Well, I should be able to, I'll just give my own example. Like I should be able to distribute this many books in a day. And oh, if I'm tired that day or I can't live up to that, like, oh man, I suck, like this is not, like this and that. And then that's not being Krishna conscious. That's just being self-absorbed. And so yeah, we basically like want to separate that. Okay, that's not really my real self talking, from the real self, which is just always happy in Krishna's service, no matter the results. So, we try our best and then leave the rest to Krishna. So yeah, we want to actually develop, the qualities mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita of a devotee, and also always think of Krishna. That's really the goal, beyond just having these layers of defense mechanisms, persona, wanting to be seen in a certain way, or holding ourselves to like some kind of our own kind of concocted standard, or who we think we should be, which can be based on, oh, how I think I'll be a good devotee. And like I said, it can also just be based on upbringing, or Hollywood, or music, or all kinds of things that exist in the material world and get really intense in Kali Yuga. So yeah, bhakti's not a mechanical process. Of course, we can chant mechanically and it'll give some benefit, but the more we're conscious about this relationship with Krishna, and the more we're conscious about trying to act according to our real nature, the closer we can come to Krishna. So this is just one thing I wanted to discuss that I've found is like, we accept what's favorable for Krishna service and we reject what's unfavorable. So just one thing I've been thinking about that has been at least favorable for me to be able to approach Krishna. Maybe somebody else finds it helpful. So just looking through my notes. So yeah, just one last point on this is that whenever we can just see like our default mechanisms, I've found that it's, like I said, you can then choose. Like once you see it, then you can choose, okay, do I want to operate on this basis, or do I want to, operate on the Krishna conscious basis? And that also just creating, like pausing and creating that space also opens us up so much more to the instructions of the spiritual master. Because then there's like, whenever you have a conscious choice, then you can bring in, okay, what has my Guru Maharaj instructed me? What has Srila Prabhupada laid out? And how can I choose to act on that information instead? And this is really, yeah, well, we have to be active. So either we can, be active under the whips of our false ego and all this persona, ideal self, critic like that, or we can operate under the loving guidance of the spiritual master. And that's actually, humility, because basically in order to act on the instructions of the spiritual master, we have to give up some of the false ego, who we think we are, and then acting on his instructions takes us into the real ego, our real self. But again, you have to become conscious to know, like, okay, I have a decision here. So yeah, and this is the importance, well, one, of chanting, and two, of reading Srimad Bhagavatam, because also reading Srimad Bhagavatam just rewires the brain. So like all this critic, persona, ideal self, like the Bhagavatam just infuses you with different aspirations, different definitions. Like I think I mentioned before, I had a book, I don't know if I still have it, that I would write down like, well, there's so many in Bhagavad Gita, and then there's more in Bhagavatam and the CC, but Prabhupada's definitions of words, that's just like mind-boggling for me. I'm like, what? He just, yeah, nothing you'd ever find in Merriam-Webster. So it's very important for us to read, actually, because Prabhupada's like, it's brainwashing. We're getting our brains cleansed and rewired to, be spiritual. So the other thing, like I said, is chanting, because in that 2 hours of chanting, you're having your quality time with Krishna, and you're just opening yourself up to Krishna's influence, actually. Like, imagine if you spent 2 hours a day of like focused time with somebody every single day. Gradually over time, you're gonna definitely, even subconsciously change, just based on that association. You'll be influenced by them. You couldn't fight it, even if you tried, it's gonna take place. So yeah, that's the importance of chanting. And then if you add 1 or 2 hours of reading Srila Prabhupada's books every day, then you're getting, the handbook for or the guidebook for how to more intimately associate with Krishna. So it's like the japa is like, Krishna, I want to associate with you, please engage me in your service. I want to spend quality time with you and focus on you. And then if you add reading to that, Prabhupada's like, okay, well, here's what Krishna likes. Here's what Krishna's like. Here's how you can approach him and love him in the way that he likes the most. So it's like he's giving you all the secrets to deepen your relationship with Krishna. And then our part is, well, we just have to have the desire to deepen the relationship with Krishna. So yeah, I just to kind of like wrap this all up and conclude is that um, again, this is a very deep subject matter, both from the Shastric point of view. I mean, false ego is everywhere in Bhagavatam, and then also this subject is like can get what I drew on the board can get like much deeper into each one. But just to summarize it is basically like that when if we become conscious of how our false ego is like a slave master, just like whipping us, then and is telling us how we have to operate in this material world, then we can just stop running on autopilot and wasting so much time and energy trying to tend to all the ways our false ego and mind pull us this way, pull us that way. This we become conscious. Oh, I have a choice, and then we can choose. Yeah, then we can choose Krishna because it takes so much time and energy to defend and protect ourselves or who I am, who I think I should be, that's based on the false ego. And if we give that up and learn how to systematically give it up and deprogram ourselves after lifetimes and even just this lifetime of being systematically programmed by the material energy and by, I mean, definitely lower forces at play. Um, yeah, even just looking into all the ways like systematically people are dulled down, even in the Western world today, and the whole world, the Western world. So it's like, oh, I've been systematically programmed a certain way. So now how can I systematically deprogram myself so that I can come back to that? It's not about self-improvement, it's about uncovering our real self. So how I can come back to that essence and improve my relationship with Krishna. So, yeah, I want to see if I just want to read this last part of the purport of text 11. Yeah, I'll just finish the last paragraph. So the Haryashvas, the sons of Prajapati Daksha, could immediately understand the purport of Narada's instructions. Our Krishna consciousness movement is especially meant for such enlightenment. We are trying to enlighten humanity so that people may come to the understanding that they should work hard in tapasya for self-realization and freedom from the continuous bondage of birth, death, old age, and disease in one body after another. Maya, however, is very strong. She is expert in putting impediments in the way of this understanding. Therefore, sometimes one comes to the Krishna consciousness movement, but again falls into the clutches of Maya, not understanding the importance of this movement. There was one other very nice verse before this. Let me see if I can find it. Anyway, I think I'll just stop there and see if anybody has reflections on these points or, additions would be nice as well. Haribo, Madhukamala.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thanks for such a nice class. I was just wondering this topic of like trying to get free from our conditioning and our contamination that we've accumulated in the material world and trying to understand the real self seems like a lifestyle, like a lifelong process, because as we go into different situations, different contamination or conditioning we didn't realize we had comes up. So I was just wondering if you could maybe share some encouragement from your personal lifestyle about how you've dealt with that and how you're dealing with it.
Yeah, it's a nice question. I'm trying to think if I can share something personally, but I was just thinking while you were speaking, like I've made I guess, not so bad mistake in the past. Like it's I can't think of the word right now. Like it's kind of a natural mistake to make. Okay, whenever you come to bhakti and it's like, oh my God, I have to be in charge of my purification. I got to get rid of this stuff right now. But it's what the point I'm trying to make is like, it's not, okay, I need to become free from my conditioning. It's more like, let me just become conscious so that then I can become like make the Krishna conscious choice. And that, yeah, again, that, like you said, it's a lifetime and it takes a lot of consciousness. I mean, it's just like, okay, moment to moment, every uh, decision. But then I was thinking of like, Devamrita Maharaj's example that I've heard him say to multiple devotees that whenever he's talking I mean, yes, to anybody, he's praying and thinking, how can I, help this person like come closer to Krishna. And I'm like, wow, imagine if we did that with every person that we talk to today. Like that's such a moment to moment consciousness. You have to be conscious of like bring yourself into the present moment of every single interaction. And that's just in yeah, in personal dealings. Imagine, then being Krishna conscious moment to moment outside of that. In the japa, moment to moment, I gotta hear this mantra, hearing the mantra, hearing the mantra. So, um, yeah, I think it is a lifetime endeavor, and of course, we're engaged in the process that Prabhupada gave us, which like is the process and will take us there. This is for me, this is just like a supplementary, like, oh, I see. I'm like actually a lot of time I'm just running on my material autopilot. So how can I bring my consciousness to the present? And I'm not even saying become present, Dinapalika. I'm just like, okay, well, how can I think of Krishna in this scenario? Which influence am I operating under? Um, So I'm trying to think of like a personal example. Yeah, I think it's a lot. I mean, I'm just kind of like in it now. One thing that I found really interesting, and this is kind of loosely related to what you're asking, is that, nowadays in Kali Yuga, everybody's traumatized, right? I mean, just having a material body is traumatizing. And you can just read in the Bhagavatam about the living entity's stay in the womb. So yeah, everybody in some way or other is like traumatized. And in Kali Yuga, it's just getting worse and worse. If you talk to anybody our age or younger, like, oh man, the horror stories. I mean, so many people are sexually abused by, parents, family members, see crazy stuff, like even just the media and like, uh, yeah, like anyway, all of it is really just like abuse. So if yeah, if we're acting, and let's say like we have things that interactions with devotees or certain scenarios that trigger us, then that brings us right into like animalistic consciousness actually. So we have a whole society that's becoming more and more animalistic because in one part because they're becoming more and more traumatized. And trauma, your reaction is like you're being chased by a tiger. It's fight, flight, freeze, or they added fawn. Um, so yeah, it's just like more and more animalistic because people are just constantly based on their past trauma. They're just like constantly triggered. I mean, kids are just so like they can't even look at you in the eye nowadays. Some of them are like shaking. It's crazy. And so they're constantly like in a, fight or flight, freeze response. And yeah, it's so basically my point is that as we have seen, you and I have seen living in the ladies' ashram or any ashram, is that a lot of people our age will have to like work through these kinds of things so that their consciousness can be elevated beyond just being in the animalistic state of like, I gotta defend myself. We spend so much out of eating, sleeping, fearing, defending and mating, we spend the most time defending this yeah, protecting ourselves, defending a persona. So basically, that doesn't directly answer your question, but it's actually, that's just been one angle that I've seen. Oh, it actually is important to work through this and support devotees, especially the younger ones as Kali Yuga progresses. Like like David Maharaj says, if you want to have an ashram, you're going to have a psychologist and a doctor on hand, which is so true because it takes devotees a long time to get over. So a lot of the time, it takes a long time to get over it. Does that help at all? Maybe I'll think of a personal example and I can share with you privately.
Thanks, Tina. Super helpful.
Cool. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna. I would like to thank you for a very nice and stimulating class. And I'm thinking about last question, and if I understood it correctly, I think Panupani Leela was asking about how we deal with the challenges of the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. And first thought that came to my mind was, or at least I can say for myself, that I feel like it boils down very much to the challenge of regulation, regulating activity, ensuring adequate time for every important aspect of sadhana, but that my experience is that everything, I think, tends to happen almost automatically by just sticking close to the structure that Srila Prabhupada gave us. You mentioned earlier your experience in Atlanta, and it sounds like they have a well-structured program of Krishna conscious activity, closer to the ideal that Srila Prabhupada established early in our movement. That's what I find just works exceedingly well, and everything else is a distant second at best. That Srila Prabhupada's program is just very, very ideal. So there's a bunch of aspects to it. Of course, there's the chanting of a minimum of 16 rounds early in the day, of course, is best. To hear Srimad Bhagavatam daily, ideally the Prabhupada sandwich of Srimad Bhagavatam in the morning, Bhagavad Gita in the evening, and attending the artiques, engaging in kirtan, particularly Mangala artik, Srila Prabhupada stressed as being very important. And oh gosh, we could go on and on for a long time. There's so many different aspects. The association of devotees, particularly the association of advanced devotees and pure devotees, the association of the spiritual master, association of our founder Acharya, the honoring of prasad, engaging in all different types of activities of devotional service. Foremost of our activities is hearing and chanting, but and Srila Prabhupada actually indicated that many of the other activities that we engage in the Krishna consciousness movement are really just to keep us occupied in a Krishna conscious way, because we lack the capacity to be able to just simply hear and chant continually throughout the day. We can only maintain that for so long. And so Srila Prabhupada created other activities for us. Um, but in any case, devotional service is absolute. Whatever activities of devotional service we are doing, they're all very, very good. But the challenge for many devotees, and I know certainly for myself, is regulation, just to regulate activities. And um, what has worked well for me over the years is just to establish a well-regulated program and sticking to it until it becomes routine, till it becomes second nature, and just happens automatically. So rising early every day and beginning all the routine activities of Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada spoke a lot about what he described as our routine work. If you were to do a search in the database, I'm not so familiar with the online database. I use the desktop version of the database, which includes everything. And particularly in Srila Prabhupada's letters, he instructs his disciples a lot, very frequently, about routine work. So our routine work includes following the regular principles, chanting 16 rounds, rising early, attending Mangala Arati, and so on. It's our basic program of Krishna consciousness, but it's interesting to see the extent to which he stressed this, the extreme importance of it, that everything depends upon it. It's the foundation upon which everything is built, and from which everything springs. We are greatly disadvantaged if we neglect any aspect of that. Um, One would do well to do a study of Srila Prabhupada's instructions on routine work. Um, just the sheer number of instances in which he repeats the same instruction is itself valuable instruction to see the extent to which he stressed the importance of this, repeating it over and over and over and over again, um, just drumming it into us. And so anyway, my personal experience is that that's what has worked very well for me, and sometimes life's circumstances oblige me to modify that program or deviate from it in various ways, um, um, and when I do, I always feel some compromise, or um, things become less ideal and the struggle becomes a little bit harder. Um, but if I can stick closely, tightly to that program, then progress is very, very rapid, and it's exciting and thrilling and ecstatic. Um, every day becomes a thrill, and progress is just so easy and so rapid. Um, that for me is the challenge, is trying to keep myself always um, well regulated. I feel like I've become pretty well regulated at this point. My program is pretty routine. My only problem now is that my health is failing, and my body sometimes creates emergencies that disrupt my regulation. It makes things very difficult. Becoming old and diseased is extremely disruptive and very, very challenging. It makes things really hard. I never dreamt that it would become as hard as this. I actually envisioned that the Krishna consciousness would become easier as I got older, and that was true to some extent earlier in my devotional life. But now in my old age, I'm roughly 70 now, I guess, and but I lived 70 years in my first 17, and I also have some hereditary conditions, past karma, and it's made uh, every every aspect of my life extremely challenging, and now much more challenging in my old age. Um, very difficult to chant my rounds now, much more difficult than ever. There was a time when I chanted 40 rounds a day, and I could not stop chanting because it was so delicious and so ecstatic. And now I have to struggle every day to try to complete 16. Um, uh, so these are things you can look forward to. Everyone will experience if you live long enough, you'll get to find out what that's like. It can become very challenging. I hope that's not the case for you, that everyone has an easy time of it, but that's often not the case. And Srila Prabhupada talks about that it can become very difficult in old age. So,
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for sharing. The doors have just opened.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Wow.